Representative Castor, please begin.
Well, good morning and welcome. I'm thrilled to be here this morning in our virtual press conference with County Commissioner Pat Kemp, County Commissioner Mariella Smith, the HART Executive Director Carolyn House-Stewart, and Florida's premier clean energy advocate and Susan Glickman. We have some good news for our neighbors here in Tampa-Hillsborough County. We're announcing a $2.7 million grant to purchase electric buses as we begin across the country to replace those dirty old transit buses and school buses with the clean and green electric vehicles. And in doing so, we're going to create thousands and thousands of jobs. That's what's on the horizon. We've kind of laid out this vision recently in the big Solving the Climate Crisis report that was issued at the end of June by my House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, which is a 500+ page blueprint for the Congress to get us to the 100% clean energy economy as soon as possible, but no later than 2050. We had a number of recommendations for the transportation sector. The transportation sector is the largest source of emissions in America. These are those energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. They are a significant source of air pollution, particularly in environmental justice communities. So America needs to make different transportation and infrastructure choices in the years ahead than it has made in the past. And we have to do so at an enormous scale. That's why I'm so excited that we're really getting started right here in my hometown. Each part of the transportation sector is different. They're on different trajectories for becoming clean and green. But here's the one where we get a big bang for the buck in changing over our transit systems. Because think about how central our HART transit buses are to our way of life here in Hillsborough. And we are poised, hopefully, with the Florida Supreme Court coming through, to expand transit in Tampa-Hillsborough at a very dramatic rate, which a recent USF College of Business study demonstrated that means that we can lift people out of poverty and we can expand jobs. So I'm very excited about it. Before I turn it over to the commissioner, I want to encourage everyone to go to house.climatecrisis.gov and read our report. What you will see is a suite of policies to be enacted by the Congress to expedite deployment of zero-emission vehicles in the sectors where they're already available, transit, while making new gasoline-powered vehicles as clean as possible. We also recommend that we grow the U.S. domestic supply chain and manufacturing base for zero-emission vehicles as a key strategy to retain and create good-paying jobs. And we want to provide all Americans with lower carbon, convenient, and affordable transportation. And that means supporting our local communities and transit systems in their efforts to adopt transit-oriented, smart growth strategies and reduce pollution, especially in our environmental justice communities. So thanks to HART for being such a terrific partner and getting things rolling in a clean and green way. And before I finish, I just want to thank all of the essential HART workers who are out there on the front lines during COVID, all of the drivers, the mechanics, everyone making sure that our frontline heroes can get to their jobs safely. So thanks.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Up next, we have Hillsborough County Commissioner and HART Board Chair Mariella Smith.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today, sharing this happy news as the HART Board Chair. But I am also the chair of our county's Environmental Protection Commission, our EPC. And I want you all to know that tomorrow at our monthly EPC meeting at 9 a.m., we are bringing in a presentation from an expert on air pollution that happens around our roadways and highways. And it's Amy Stewart, professor of USF Department of Occupational Health and Engineering. And she's going to be talking about near road air quality and how our EPC monitors air quality. And Commissioner Kemp knows that as we're both on the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we have been bringing these concerns forward of how air pollution of our vehicles on our roadways really impacts the communities. And particularly, Congresswoman Castor, as you were mentioning, it's a disparate impact in disadvantaged communities, and we need, it's an issue of equity and environmental justice. And so we'll be addressing that and learning more about that tomorrow as our community brings that forward. I am very grateful to Congresswoman Kathy Castor and to all the HART staff for all their hard work to secure this funding for HART. This grant couldn't have come at a more advantageous time. Switching to new technology will create more skilled jobs right here in our community, and reducing our carbon footprint is very important to the future of the Tampa Bay area, ground zero of climate change and sea level rise. And these new zero emission electric buses will make our air cleaner. And that makes a big difference in the health of our citizens and in the quality of life for so many in our community, whether they ride the bus or not. When we roll out these buses, I know our riders will be proud to say that they have one of the cleanest commutes in Hillsborough County. And so thank you very much, Congresswoman Castor and staff of HART and everyone who has been so helpful in bringing this to our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Hillsborough County Commissioner Pat Kemp.
Here because I didn't have my thank you. I am just so thrilled, and thank you so much. I can't get the smile off my face, Congresswoman Castor. I have worked to get some electric presents for HART for 4 years now as a HART board member, and have I want to see us go 100% renewable. And I've watched as other communities across Florida have successfully gotten electric buses, but in St. Petersburg and Gainesville, Tallahassee back in 2008, and are ordering, I think something like 75 electric buses there in South Florida, going 100% renewable in other parts of the country. And certainly we can too, and should. You mentioned air quality. It's a tremendous problem. We have we're plagued by some of the worst air quality in the state of Florida on certain days, here right at I-4 and I-275. And that affects, as we've talked about, environmental justice and disparate or communities of concern who suffer greatly from increased asthma, cardiovascular disease. They've even traced it to cancer and perhaps dementia, that poor air quality. And that's, we're talking about the particulate matter. Then we talk about the greenhouse gases, and we know that for us, we are ground zero for sea level rise and greenhouse gases. And so we need to be ground zero for being 100% renewable. It's our time to do this. And I am so deeply grateful, Congresswoman Castor, for you reaching out and partnering with HART to make this possible, because I think these buses, and I understand up to 4, will be kicking off our move, not just from CNG, but we still have some 90 diesel buses, and we have got to move into this century and do everything we can. I just read a little bit about Colombia, where with their buses, they said even though they're only 5% of their travel, that they count for something like 25% of their carbon dioxide, 40% of their NOx and particulate matter. We can make a huge difference, and especially when we get our big fleet in that I hope we are seeing in our future, and we move to people using our transit system in a greater way. I will tell you, Congresswoman, that because right now we're so underfunded, and as we know, in desperate need of expanding our system, and I think it's shown during this coronavirus COVID time, because we have kept a greater percentage of riders than almost any transit agency across the country, because people here are so dependent on the system that we have. It is so important in this community to do the service that we have here with HART. And I just think this is a wonderful time we've had too much bad news. It's great to have this good news about cleaning up our air. It's going to save our taxpayer dollars, even though we make a greater investment initially. We're saving on maintenance, we're saving on operations, and we're saving on the cost of fuel. And I'd also like to thank TECO for being a partner in this. And I think oftentimes I have heard, well, when you do your electric buses, which I eventually would like to see solar powered by us, right. But they've said, well, where does the fuel come from? And it comes from TECO right now. And I think it's little recognized that TECO has made a giant move into solar power. And I understand by 2023, they're looking at 1,250 megawatts of solar power throughout Hillsborough County. They've already got more than 600. And that's enough to power 200,000 homes. They will be a renewable energy leader in the state. And we will be using that power to power our buses and to save our taxpayer dollars, to make our greenhouse gases go better, to address our community's concern. It's a win in so many ways. So thank you so much for doing this for us. And again, too, I'll say thank you to our incredible HART employees. And I'll say too that at one point I remember a meeting where our maintenance workers came and said, please get us electric buses. so it's going to be, and for our drivers, it will be quiet, less vibration. They'll be wonderful in our community. So it's a very, very exciting time.
Thank you so much. A reminder to the media, if you have any questions, please submit them via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. And up next, we have HART Interim CEO Carolyn House-Stewart.
Good morning. On behalf of Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, I thank you, Congresswoman Castor, for your continued advocacy for public transportation. Today, we acknowledge your highly valuable support to help HART secure $2.7 million in funding from the Federal Transit Administration's Bus and Bus Facilities Grant Program. HART has been selected as one of 5 projects within the state of Florida that will receive funding. This agency will purchase up to 4 electric buses and supporting infrastructure. We thank HART's local grant partner, TECO, for committing to provide 50% of HART's required match for infrastructure to ensure the project is successful. We really appreciate TECO's investment in this project. You spoke about creation of jobs. We have identified 3 routes located within the opportunity zones as approved by the U.S. Department of Treasury for use of these electric buses. And these are zones with a poverty rate of at least 20%. HART will continue to seek opportunities to enhance our ability to improve access, mobility, and reliable, safe transportation for the patrons who depend upon our service. In these unprecedented times, it's even more important to deliver innovative transportation options, reduce the carbon footprint, and make improvements to our fleet. Again, we offer our sincerest gratitude and thank you, Congresswoman Kathy Castor, and to the entire congressional delegation for your leadership, partnership, and support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have Florida Director for Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, Susan Glickman.
Right. Thank you very much for having me. And Congresswoman Castor, your leadership is just such a bright spot, what you're doing on the committee and what you do for also my hometown. And I'm just proud to be an ally with you. You know, we really are talking about an intersection of some of the most important issues of our time. We're here in this period of COVID. COVID is, after all, a respiratory virus. So every time you get an internal combustion engine off the road, you are helping to protect people's public health. There's an intersection, of course, with climate change. So the ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It was said earlier, Florida, Tampa Bay, we are ground zero for the impacts of climate change. And the transportation sector at large has overtaken power plants in terms of overall emissions. So this is a big, important piece of the puzzle. And then the environmental sort of justice and economic justice issues, which are being laid bare so clearly in our society. And, you know, getting people to work, and just the role that public transportation, and as a Tampa native, you know, it was never considered that we had a good system for people who didn't have cars. And so to see the recommitment in our community to transportation, public transit, and overall the electrification of transportation in general. And it saves money. In Greensboro, North Carolina, they are going all electric, and their transportation department estimates they're going to save $300,000 to $350,000 on each bus over the life cycle of it. And so we have to begin to look longer term. We have to look at cost over time. We have to look at what we used to call externalities. They're not externalities, they are the cost. And if we continue to put pollution in our atmosphere, whether it be particulate matter or dangerous carbon pollution, we are all paying the price for this every day. And the people who can least afford it, the people who are most vulnerable, are paying the largest share of that burden. So I'm just really pleased to be here. And I have a suggestion. One of the greatest examples, it was mentioned earlier, in our state is the city of Tallahassee. And they have recently, they got a grant. The funding for this, the investment is so important, particularly with the federal government, you know, as the partner there. But Tallahassee got some money. They were the first to get 5 Proterra buses quite some time ago. And more recently, the Florida State University has added 22 electric buses. So here's my suggestion. Since we're all missing football so terribly, I think we need to start a different kind of a rivalry. And so if FSU can do it, I'd like to go to my friends that are Hurricanes and my friends that are Gators and on, and see if they can't catch up to Florida State University on those electric buses. So people are seeing the public health protection, the greenhouse gas reduction, the financial savings, and, you know, it's sort of like what's not to like. And these issues couldn't be more important. So thank you for helping Congresswoman Castor and Commissioner Smith and Kemp. I know Pat Kemp has been fighting for this for years and years. And so, and also over to HART. So that's it. I'm just happy to be part of a positive, uplifting occasion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So it looks like we already have a few questions in the queue. Congresswoman, would you like to make any remarks before we turn over to them?
No, I'm eager to hear the questions.
Perfect. A reminder to everyone to continue to add questions to the chat feature so that we can get to them. But first, we have Daniel from WMNF. He is wondering if these buses will be added to the fleet or replacing other vehicles. Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to answer.
These buses will be replacing some of the buses that we already have.
Wonderful. Up next, we have a question from Caitlin Johnston with the Tampa Bay Times. What infrastructure is required and how much will it cost total between HART and TECO?
The infrastructure that will be required will be the underground wiring, charging stations, inline chargers along the route of the electric buses, because they can only travel a certain amount of miles. And so there's the charging stations, which we call the plug-in chargers, as well as the inline chargers and the underground wiring and the other construction that goes along with that.
Great. And we have another question from Caitlin with the Tampa Bay Times. Commissioner Kemp mentioned the goal of HART becoming all electric. How much would that cost? Where would the money come from? And what do you think is a realistic timeline for that conversion?
If I was going to let staff, but for one, I don't think we have anything like that at this. First of all, we don't have that goal, but I'd like it to be a goal for us to have. We've talked many times about just starting to purchase our first electric buses. So I don't have any idea how much that would cost, but I've looked at agencies across the country. In fact, the state of California is requiring all electric buses by 2029. There are many transit agencies, as Susan just mentioned, in North Carolina, but that's not the only one that by 2030 has a goal of going all electric. I think many of our buses have about a 10-year lifespan, so that would be replacing them as we go now. They're replaced, as you can imagine, on a yearly basis, and again, you would have to be starting to measure, and by all accounts, by all other agencies, your initial upfront investments are greater, but your long-term, you save on your cost of fuel and maintenance and operations with your electric bus. So I think it would be a calculation that we'd have to do, but many other agencies have done. Also, many of our buses are purchased with a grant with the state with a 20/80 match, so that typically the state of Florida through FTA makes the 80% match. We do the 20%. So it's a calculation I think would take a while to work out in whole and get those answers for you. And it would be a goal that I think most definitely many transit agencies have that goal by 2030 now. And I think it's going to be growing. Also, the availability of electric buses is growing. There used to be one electric bus producer started in South Carolina, Proterra, and they had, I think, something like 50 buses a year in their first years available, and that is for the entire nation. And then BYD from China came to California. They started making buses available, and now there's two other traditional bus agencies that have sold most of the buses in the country that are now beginning. I don't even know that they've produced their first electric buses. So the availability wasn't there, but we've reached a point, I think, where the demand is so great that these buses will become more and more available.
Let me just add, I think it's really important to have a plan. You set a goal, and we hope that Hillsborough County will set a goal to move to 100% clean energy in the community and in their operations, and then you do a transition plan. You know, King County, Washington, the Seattle area, they're doing it. Albuquerque's doing it. There's a very small town in South Carolina called Seneca, and they're doing it. They have a complete electric fleet. So you get a plan, you replace them. Even in Orlando, the Orlando Utility Commission, the city of Orlando has their own utility, and they're buying the batteries. And then at the end of sort of the battery life, they're going to use those batteries in emergency operations centers. So to the question of exactly what it's going to cost, it's just changing every day. I mean, I bought a television, you know, we're all in COVID, and I was shocked at how inexpensive televisions are now, right? The first microwave oven, a Mana radar range, was like $1,000. You go to a place and buy, you know, a microwave for $100 now, right? So this is where we're headed. It's all about volume. The cost of solar has come down exponentially. You know, no one would have sort of guessed that, but that is, that's where we're at. And it's an overall electrification of transportation. It's going to get, the grid is constantly getting cleaner. So that's where we have to go, and it's a process, but you're going to save money. I'm going to repeat what the Greensboro, North Carolina transportation director said. We're going to save $300,000 to $350,000 on every bus is what over the life cycle. So, you know, it's going to be a better world ultimately, but you got to take the first step. So I'm so proud that these 4 buses are going to, you know, replace polluting buses. And that's really key. And I was happy to hear you say that. So we're going to take some polluting buses off the road. We're going to protect people's public health, and we're going to save money and hopefully protect our natural environment.
Great, thank you so much. And then more questions. How far can these buses travel on a single charge, and are they going to be designated for certain routes?
At the stance now, they will be designated for certain routes, and those are our most highly traveled routes within the urban core. 3 of those routes within the economic opportunity zones, which is within the 20% poverty level by the U.S. Department of Treasury. Scott Drainville is our director of maintenance, who is not on this call. He's on vacation, but he did a report to our board that covered how far our average electric bus would travel and some of the technical questions that we can get back with you with those answers. However, the cost of this project for the 4 buses is $5,549,350. And as our panel has said, this is the initial cost. And as we look at over time, it will benefit HART because we won't spend as much money for maintenance for our aged fleet as we have been. So the more technical questions, I don't have that information, but we will get back with you with the answers to that from our director of maintenance and our team at HART.
Great, thank you so much. It looks like that is our last question. Congresswoman, if you'd like to wrap us up.
Well, I'm grateful to all of my local partners for really charting the course here for our clean energy transition in the Tampa-Hillsborough area. And I'm always grateful to have by my side Florida's premier clean energy advocate, Susan Glickman, who's been at this and encouraging this state. You know, the state of Florida is behind. I have a front row seat to what's going on all across the country, and to think that here we are in the Sunshine State and we really don't use the clean solar power that we have at our disposal. But that is changing now. I'm glad that TECO is a partner in this. They need to continue to clean up their energy sources, so these buses really are the cleanest they can be. In the Solving the Climate Crisis report, we lay out that by no later than 2040, we have to clean up the entire power sector, and that by no later than 2035, every new vehicle sold in America should be a clean net zero vehicle. So you put those goals on top of what's happening here at the local level, and we just need to expedite this transition to clean energy. And the good news is it will save money. It will make our communities more resilient to the escalating cost of the climate crisis. And it will create thousands and millions of good paying jobs at the same time, at a time where our economy is really going to need this shot in the arm moving forward. So thanks again, and I really enjoyed our Girl Power moment here this morning. It's obvious who gets stuff done around here.
Thank you all for joining us. That concludes today's press conference.